Well, hello and welcome back to the Pastor's Q&A. I'm Pastor Ryan. This here is Pastor Jeremy, and we are bringing you a special episode today because instead of answering your questions, we are going to be the ones asking the questions. We have with us a special guest, a guy by the name of Seth Gruber. Seth, thank you so much for coming on and being part of our show today.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know you, I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how did you get into pro-life ministry? Tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on. I have huge respect for pastors that stand on pro-life. You know, Francis Schaeffer once said that every abortion clinic ought to have a sign out front that says, "Open with the permission of the Church of Jesus Christ." And it rings true for a lot of people. And the same people who sort of pontificate about how engaged they would have been in Germany in 1940 and how engaged they would have been in America in 1850. How could those rubes have allowed the Holocaust and slavery? What kind of Christianity was that would sit on the sidelines and say, that's political, we don't talk about that? But the same people who say that typically are completely silent on the genocide of abortion. And so I have huge respect for pastors that are going to stand on life, because I think that if you don't get the right to life right, you won't get any other rights right. And I would never sit under a pastor who, one, doesn't talk about abortion, rarely talks about abortion, or doesn't equip his congregation, educating them, empowering them to be salt and light in the culture and to end abortion. And so it's always encourages my heart as someone who speaks all around the country in churches to hang out with pastors who are sort of on that same battlefront and who God's has sort of gotten a hold of their hearts. So good to be on with you guys. I got involved in this movement really as a fetus. As an embryo, as a zygote. So I've been swimming in these waters for a long time. And I know you guys are probably thinking, like, what the heck does that mean? Well, my mother was the director of a pregnancy resource center while pregnant with me. And so I was doing backflips in the womb while my mother was doing backflips, bending over backwards to help women to save their children, to choose life. And even prior to being pregnant with me and prior to getting married to my father, my mom was housing pregnant women who didn't have anywhere to live. She would often babysit the now toddlers, the children of the mothers who had chosen life, but never had that man in the picture to help. And so sometimes they just needed a break. And 2, 3, 4 years later, after these children are toddlers now, my mom would help babysit these kids. So this whole thing about those pro-lifers are only pro-birth. They don't give a rat's bleep once that baby's born. It's just completely not true. And that's just sort of a single picture to represent that. And so that was sort of how I got involved. So I was very involved in the pro-life movement. My mom actually stepped down after I was born because she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, raised my sisters, homeschooled us, me through 8th grade, went off to public high school. Senior year, did my senior project on abortion. Whittier High School, LA County, Nixon's alma mater, tells me, you can't pick that topic.
Really?
Wow. Because, we have these, look at these senior project guidelines right here. It says you can't pick the abortion issue for your senior project.
Really?
And I said, look right here. This is the, it's the Constitution that you just had me read in government. I got one for you. I'm sort of, speaking a little bit hyperbolically, but that's basically how it went down. And I sort of insinuated that they would have a lawsuit on their hands.
Sure.
I was 17 as a senior in high school, and they were like, whoa, we didn't expect you to pay attention in the class we're making you take. And so by the time I was a freshman in college, just for funsies, I went back onto my Whittier High School website to look at whether those rules were still up, and they had taken down that portion of their website. And rightly so. And that's also just sort of a cool story about what happens when you stand for truth. And meet God where he's already contending, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And when you stare lies in the face and call them lies, truth prevails, because truth tends to be self-evident. I went off to Westmont College, one of the worst Christian colleges in the entire world, in the entire country, one of the most progressive left Christian universities in the country. I didn't know that when I got there and when I got accepted. And I was raised in a sort of your typical Christian church, like youth group, play dodgeball, hit girls in the face, play a game, get a really mealy mouth, sort of milky sermon, Jesus loves you, repent, and then, have fun serving him. Not really a lot of depth, a lot of meat. It's pretty typical, unfortunately, for most youth group experiences. And so I wasn't really aware of these theological debates within sort of Christian evangelicalism. I wasn't aware that there were people who would identify as Christian and pro-choice. I wasn't aware that a Christian college would hire pro-abortion professors, which Westmont College does. So I came in there just thinking it's a Christian college. I mean, their motto is Christus primatum tenens, Christ preeminent in all things. I mean, awesome. Like, I didn't think that
Yeah.
there would be these divides when I got there over like fundamental first tenant type of issues, like marriage,
Yeah.
like gender, like whether all humans are persons, whether the unborn is a person and
Yeah.
deserves the right to life. It was wild to me.
Yeah, that is wild.
And so that was sort of how I got involved. As a freshman, I started the first pro-life club at Westmont College.
Okay. Well, one of the things about abortion that is, I think, it's daunting to people because it's such a big issue, or it seems bigger than them in terms of it's the Supreme Court decision and everything. With it being such a large and daunting issue, how can an individual make a difference?
Yeah, amen.
You know, how can an individual do something that would actually change culture, change policy, save life?
Yeah, there's sort of the micro local level, right? And then there's sort of the macro political level, because politics have consequences, because policies have consequences. And politicians write policy.
Yeah.
And so that macro level is important, and I can talk to that. But because there is a role actually for the individual in the political sphere. But I'll talk to sort of firstly the micro level, like you right now listening to this.
Yeah.
What do I do? You know, maybe you don't remain tuned in to sort of the whirlwind of political news in our country, and you're just like, my heart's broken about abortion. I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
Firstly, I would say just like that first step, like the most simplistic thing ever, is to always speak truth. Never allow a lie to go by unnoticed or unacknowledged, or worse yet, convincing someone else that this lie is in fact the truth. And, you know, this weekend we're talking a lot about that, about how to do that and how to articulate the pro-life position. But shortly, life begins at the moment of conception. There is no such thing as a partial human or becoming human.
Yeah.
It's not partially human. Like it has biological like DNA that makes it a human, but it's not really like a full human. No, this is anti-scientific nonsense. There is no such thing. You are a whole human being from the moment of conception. And any argument one uses to justify abortion can be used to justify killing born people. So that's the short sort of 30-second pitch of the pro-life position. Life begins at the moment of conception, wholly human, and they're full persons with equal rights and equality, because any argument you use to justify abortion can be used to kill you. So speak that truth and always speak out.
Just in general, everyday conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And be willing to be hated and put your reputation on the line.
Sure.
You know, be willing to count the cost. This is a genocide. And I think that the longer you stay silent and quiet when you know the truth, I actually believe that this has actual consequences for your soul. Now, again, if you're hearing this, please don't hear me saying like, you suck, you need to do more. Like, please don't hear that. But just know that I actually believe that just as physical atrophy occurs through not using your muscles, I firmly believe that moral atrophy can occur through not using your voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking truth, calling lies lies, and saying, no, that is an evil idea. That is wrong. It offends God, the creator of the universe, and it offends me as someone created in the image of God, because your idea has espoused the murder of innocent human beings.
Yeah.
Speak truth all the time. You know, have you guys read the new book, Live Not by Lies?
I'm aware of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read some of Roger's other stuff, and I heard the podcast with Heidi that she did with Ron.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I missed that one, but I
Fascinating.
saw she had him on. But
Yeah.
I mean, the book is very popular right now, and I think
Yeah.
it's because it's propitious. It's coming out of a propitious moment when he's sort of acknowledging and calling out this rot that's been growing in America that just sort of has increased and sped up tenfold. And that rot are bad ideas. And bad ideas rooted in secular humanism, in Gnostic dualism, in Marxism. And he's giving a platform to voices and people who left communist countries to flee to America.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, I'm recognizing some of the same type of small rot now that was happening in the country I fled before it went full-blown communist.
Yeah.
And so anyways, he talks about this anti-Polish, anti-communist Polish dissident by the name of Czesław Miłosz. And Czesław Miłosz talked about this Persian word called ketman. And this Persian word ketman was a sort of metaphysical or philosophical strategy that individuals would go through in order to appear as if they were conforming to Islamic orthodoxy. While inwardly dissenting. So they would go through certain rhythms, words they'd say, or just remaining silent in order to look like they were conforming with the Islamic State. But inwardly they were dissenting. Inwardly, they were saying, I don't believe in Islamic theology and this religion and the demands that it puts on my life. I believe this is wrong, evil, misplaced, and untrue. But you wouldn't know it. The only way that many people's anti-communist dissent portrayed itself was in their minds as they told themselves they didn't like what was going on.
Sure.
But what did that do to end the evil that was happening? Nothing.
Yeah.
So for many pro-lifers today, guys, if you're listening to this, many pro-lifers are in the same position, pro-life
makes a lot of
Christians.
sense, yeah.
The only way that they dissent and resist the evil of our times, which is 1 million murdered babies every year in America, funded by your tax dollars, and now you're paying for abortions overseas because Biden rescinded the Mexico City policy.
Yeah.
The only way that they resist that is saying, I'm pro-life, and I talk about it to my other pro-life friends, and then I think thoughts that are pro-life, but what are you doing to end this? And so what Dreher talks about in the book, as he explains this idea from Czeslaw Milosz and this idea of Kettman, is that the longer you portray this character, the sooner you will become the character you portray. So as long as you continue to go through the role of inwardly dissenting while not outwardly resisting, your soul will eventually decay, and your moral compass will eventually decay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because moral atrophy will occur when you don't practice your voice and your courage and your spine.
Yeah.
So that's why I would say speak truth.
Yeah.
Because I think it actually has consequences for you and who you want to become by allowing lies to be passed off as truth.
Good.
Good. That's awesome. Well, along those lines, you had mentioned a little bit earlier that every pro-choice argument can basically be folded in on itself. And so that was sort of a question I had. What are, you do different debates, you talk to different people, obviously engage with a lot of pro-abortion advocates, things like that. So what are some of the most common pro-choice, pro-abortion arguments, and what is the pro-life response to some of those more common arguments that people are going to see in everyday life around the water cooler? What would you say to that?
I'd say the most common ones are typically the hard cases, quote unquote hard cases.
Rape,
Sure.
incest,
So let's
something
just
like
go with two big ones: rape, incest, and life of the mother. Okay, let me give you the soundbite replies. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to rewind and get that 5-second soundbite, you can have it, and then hopefully that soundbite will trigger the more detailed response for you, because I don't want to fire hose people. I have a tendency to do that, and they leave my hour-long sermon and they're like,
shocked.
So let me give you soundbites. So rape, right? A woman was raped. How could you force her to have a baby? You don't get to kill Timmy because daddy did something wrong.
Yeah.
That's your soundbite. Children should not be forced to suffer for the crimes of their father.
Yeah.
There's another soundbite for you. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not acknowledging the horrific situation that this woman is in. And by the way, I support more harsher penalties against rapists. Hopefully I can say this on this show, but I would support castrations. I would also be willing to entertain the death penalty. But I don't know if you guys know this, but rapists don't even get life in prison. If you rape a woman, you do not get life. So we can acknowledge that horrific situation, support full legal penalties being brought against the rapist, but it's actually not compassionate to kill her baby or tell her that it's okay to kill her baby because you have quote unquote sympathy or empathy for the trauma she was exposed to through a disgusting animal, exercising his sexual appetite. That's actually not compassionate to say that. And here's why. Abortion is wrong for the same reasons that rape is wrong.
Yeah.
Because rape is wrong because it's unjustified, completely unjustified violence against an innocent human being.
Yeah.
Why is abortion wrong?
Yeah.
Completely unjustified violence against an
Yeah.
innocent human being, except in the case of abortion, the baby's almost always dead. In the case of rape, yes, some men murder the women they rape, but most rape victims are not murdered.
Yeah.
So one could actually argue abortion is significantly worse, but they're actually wrong for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Secondly, abortion doesn't unrape a woman. And we've seen from studies that women end up increasing the likelihood of their suicidal tendencies, substance abuse, and stuff like this, and depression, when they get an abortion after rape. And the women who have chosen to mother the children or give birth to the children that they were impregnated with through rape have never said that they regret keeping the baby. Shocker, guys. Everyone who keeps their baby, regardless of how it was conceived, and never says, man, I really wish I aborted you. Now, some women who struggle with suicidal tendencies and alcoholism might say something horrible like that to one of their children at some point, but no woman actually regrets not aborting her child, right?
Yeah, that's right. Oftentimes along those lines, I've also heard a lot of testimonies about women who have experienced rape and then go on to abort their babies, and they say something along the lines of the abortion was actually worse than the rape. It was a greater violation
I've heard many
than the
women say
rape
that
was, and obviously that comes with tremendous regret, heaping guilt on top of the guilt that they're already experiencing.
Yeah.
Whereas choosing to keep the baby, it's amazing to see stories about just God redeeming that situation, bringing something beautiful out of something that is so broken, so evil, so wrong. And so that's something that God can do.
Another thing on that point about when people make the argument saying, well, what about these hard cases? Well, that's a huge minority. Yeah, 0.5% of all abortions are occurred under those circumstances. So you're using a very hard situation to justify all the other situations where that doesn't apply.
Yeah, here's another soundbite. Ask someone who uses the rape circumstance to justify their pro-choice position. Ask them, hey, cool, if we set aside the 0.5%, which according to the Guttmacher Institute, Planned Parenthood's research branch in 2004, 0.5% of the annual abortions were the result of rape. So then ask them, hey, if we just set aside the 0.5% really quick, will you join me to fight to end the 99.5% of all other abortions?
Right.
And what does every pro-choicer say? Yeah, they say no. So then here you go. I say, then why are you hiding behind rape victims to make your position look compassionate?
Yeah, good.
Right.
Yeah.
Call their bluff. Don't let them get away with that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if I held up a photo to you of a baby conceived in rape and a baby conceived by two loving parents starting a family, both at 16 weeks of gestation, could you tell me which one was conceived in rape?
Sure.
And that should sort of tune us into a deeper reality here, which is that at a fundamental level, we know that these are image bearers of God. We know that these are innocent human beings because our value does not come from the circumstances of our conception. That's a dangerous road to go down because then you open a door to justify killing all sorts of people who were conceived in less than ideal circumstances. I mean, so then it becomes like, okay, well then what's the line then? At which point, at which point it's okay to not kill you. It's okay to give you life because the circumstances won't be so bad that you'll have wished you were killed. Like, where is that line? As soon as you grant the premise that horrific circumstances and how you entered the world might justify killing you, we're in dangerous territory now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one of the most popular ones, and it's ridiculous. What about life of the mother? Soundbite. It's never medically necessary to perform an abortion to save mom's life. And this is actually one of the most... It's one of probably the most deceptive talking points that the pro-choice movement has implanted into the minds of pro-lifers, not to mention the rest of the country. I have pro-life people tell me all the time, I'm pro-life, I'm against abortion, except when the mother's life is on the line. And I'm like, well, yes, we never want a woman to unnecessarily die. We're not going to tell a woman in a life-threatening situation that you have to carry this baby to term whether you die or not. But that's sort of the premise they're functioning under, is that somehow this is common and that like you have to perform abortions to save mom's life. So here's how you think through this. If the pregnancy is what is causing the risk to the mother's life, which it is, that's why one would argue she needs an abortion, not because of some abdominal pain, it's because of the pregnancy. So if the pregnancy is causing the threat to the mother's life, the question becomes, is abortion the only way to end pregnancy? No. You can induce early labor with Pitocin, or you can perform a cesarean section. And for the listeners, you guys need to know that that's actually safer than an abortion.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're wondering, like, how's the best way to cater towards women's health in high-risk pregnancies, it's actually not to perform an abortion. It's actually to deliver the baby early, either through inducing early labor or performing a C-section. Now, someone might say, yeah, but what if the baby is at, you just anticipate these objections. Someone will say, well, what if the baby is at 17 weeks, 20 weeks, they're not going to survive? Okay, right. And if we're forced to deliver that baby early to save mom's life, then we still have to do that. But are we actively killing the baby? See, people have to understand what the definition of abortion is. What is it? The intentional killing of the unborn child. Intent in any moral framework, and certainly a legal framework, is a very important concept. Intent. You tripped over my foot, you fell off a cliff. I didn't intend that. I stuck out my foot to trip you and you fell over the cliff. Now I murdered you.
Sure.
But you tripped over my foot either way. Yes, but you intended something different in one circumstance, Seth, right? So intent, obviously we get that. What's the intent in delivering a baby early or performing a C-section? It's to save mom's life. We're not actively killing the baby. So even in the worst case scenario, the worst case scenario would be this. If this pregnancy continues, mom will die. We deliver the baby early because if the baby develops any more, mom will die. And the stage at which we have to deliver the baby doesn't allow us to save the baby's life after it's born. That would be the worst case scenario, right?
How common is that scenario?
Very rare. Very,
Yeah.
very rare. And so even in that situation, you give baby to mom to have as much time together as possible. Does the baby still die? Yes. But how much more compassionate is that than actively killing the baby, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's really just one circumstance left where we know a priori, that means foreknowledge, like beforehand. We know beforehand that we can't save both mom and baby.
Okay.
That's called an ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
You guys know what this is.
Yeah.
Maybe your wife has had it. Some of your friends, your wife's friends have had this. It's rare, but it's not entirely. It's not like you haven't met someone. You probably know someone who's had an ectopic pregnancy. That's when the baby implants in the fallopian tube or outside of the uterus, typically in the fallopian tube. So, as your listeners probably know, babies don't implant in the fallopian tube. They're supposed to implant in the uterus. Yeah. We're all former womb dwellers. We're all former uterus dwellers, right? Well, what happens after implantation? Baby starts to grow. Fallopian tube begins to expand. What happens if left untreated? Fallopian tube bursts, baby dies, and mom will bleed out internally. And if you don't have mom at the hospital like immediately, mom will die. Mm-hmm. Women die from ruptured ectopic or tubal pregnancies all the time, fallopian tube. So in that circumstance, if you don't do anything, how many lives do you lose? 2. So the pro-life movement has always said it's better to act to save one life than refuse to act and lose 2 lives.
Sure.
But even in that circumstance, did you know it's not called an abortion? There's actually different surgical names for the procedure that removes the baby from the fallopian tube. It's either a salpingectomy or a salpingostomy. Either you create a small incision in the fallopian tube and you remove baby, or you have to remove the entire fallopian tube. Either way, it's not an abortion because you're not intentionally killing the baby. You're intentionally saving the life of the mother. So thanks to medical advancements, we can almost always save the life of both mother and baby. So if you're a woman and you're listening to this, congratulations. Your life is at less of a risk because of pregnancy than any other woman in all of human history. Yeah. By the way, you guys want to know the youngest baby ever born and survived?
Sure.
21 weeks, 0 days. 21 weeks and 0 flipping days.
That's amazing.
That baby was born in, I believe, the summer of 2019.
Okay.
And got home probably I think right after this COVID shutdown. So early 2020.
Do you remember where that baby was born? Because we had a real young birth at one of our hospitals here in town at Salmon Creek Legacy. I don't remember where that baby was born, but the baby who broke the record before this baby at 21 weeks, 0 days was baby Ellie, 21 weeks, 6 days. And baby Ellie's mother was highlighted by President Trump during his State of the Union address in 2020.
Okay.
Yes, that's right, in 2020, which was the State of the Union February, I believe. So President Trump, the presidency, they highlight someone in the stands, and this person represents an American success story that we helped make happen because I'm a great president. I mean, it's very self-congratulatory, and presidents across the political aisle have been doing it for a long time. But he highlights baby Ellie and her mother. And baby Ellie was born at 21 weeks and 6 days at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City.
Okay.
Wow. Babies born at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, born before 24 weeks, have a 55% survival rate, whereas the nationwide percentage for babies born before 24 weeks is 13%.
Oh, wow.
So when you invest time, talent, and resources into saving preemies, you can do it.
Yeah.
But now the record is 21 weeks and 0 days. That's almost half of the pregnancy. That's
amazing.
Incredible. So that's just to make the point that even when a woman's in a very high-risk pregnancy, she could die, typically you can put these women on bed rest, take care of them, love them both, baby and mother, and get them to that gestational point at which the baby could be delivered early and you can save both.
Good. Awesome. Well, what are some things that, as you look at the pro-life movement, some things that are discouraging and presently, and some things that are encouraging at the moment? Yeah,
the greatest discouragement within the pro-life movement is the redefinition of pro-life. So have you heard this? I'm not pro-life, I'm whole life. Have you heard things like this?
I haven't heard that, no.
I'm a consistent life person, womb to tomb. And the idea behind this is something all Christians would agree with, because life is intrinsic, because human beings are intrinsically valuable because they're image bearers of God. Then any attack against the dignity of human beings is attack against their creator. And so Christians in particular who recognize where rights come from and who created us have a greater duty than secular humanists to care for the least among us. That idea is something we would all say yes and amen to.
Yeah.
But what this new redefinition of pro-life aims to do is to tell pro-lifers in the pro-life movement that in order to be truly pro-life, for you to prove your pro-life credentials, you have to fight more than just abortion. You have to engage on all of these life issues because, guys, universal health care and a universal minimum wage of $20, these are life issues too. Gotcha. And so what they end up doing is they conflate, ready? Protection of life in the womb with quality of life outside the womb. Okay. In fact, many of these whole lifers, they actually will elevate quality of life outside the womb. And so these whole lifers insist that they are pro-life, but they're pro-life for everyone. And so this redefinition is very dangerous because pro-life means you are opposed to abortion and seek its abolition. If someone asks you, hey, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Nobody actually thinks that they're being asked whether they're for all choices or against all lives.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that. We know what that means when someone asks you if you're pro-life or pro-choice. Everyone knows, I'm being asked if I'm for or against abortion. Mm-hmm. So these woke whole lifers take the term pro-life and say, you actually have to do more than fight abortion. So I'm pro-life for immigrants. I'm pro-life for universal health care. I'm pro-life for low-income families. I'm pro-life at the border. I'm pro-life in the womb. But what does that actually mean? I mean, tangibly, what am I supposed to do with that? Am I supposed to fight sex trafficking on Monday, universal health care on Tuesday, open borders on Friday, sex trafficking, poverty, orphan foster care system, soup kitchens, and then maybe if I have time, I can spend time with my family and fight abortion on the weekends. I mean, what does this actually mean in real life? Nothing. That's the whole point. Is they're trying to water down the meaning of pro-life to make it mean virtually nothing. And young pro-lifers are adopting this redefinition of pro-life because it sounds good. It's like, I am pro-life from womb to tomb. Like, I do support all lives. And so then they feel like they actually have to do more, but nobody could reasonably do that, especially when there's other organizations and movements better funded than the pro-life movement towards those other injustices. And some of them aren't injustices. I mean, universal health care, that actually is unjust. You're just taking away money from others to give it to others and then call it compassionate. So that's what the thing I'm most discouraged with. And you're seeing a lot of quote unquote pro-life leaders and evangelical friends of the pro-life movement cave to this redefinition of pro-life.
Yeah, and so often I think you see it as kind of like you said, it's like a roadblock. It's saying, well, no, you can't actually fight for life in the womb until you've checked all these other boxes.
That's right.
And so, and really, it's just it's sort of a conversation stopper. And it's like, no, actually, we can fight for life in the womb.
Yeah.
And then, sure, if there's some other just causes, we want to fight for those too.
Right.
But let's do this as well.
And also throw it right back in their face. So find someone who fights sex trafficking or fights for gun control, which I mean, I don't think we should have strict gun control laws. We have an amendment that protects that right. Obviously, red flag laws. If you're mentally just unstable, you shouldn't get a gun. I'm very reasonable about that. But people who fight for this, ask them. And especially in this progressive area we're in. I mean, anywhere you turn, someone's going to be anti-gun. Or they're going to be, engaging some other social issue. Just ask them, oh my gosh, I thought you were anti-gun. Doesn't that mean you're pro-life? Because you don't want people to be killed? So tell me, what's the anti-gun movement doing about the poor kids at the border? And they would be like, well, no. We care about those lives, but like we have a narrow-minded we believe that the more focused we are on one goal, the greater will increase the likelihood that we accomplish that goal. So like I fully support the kids at the border, and I don't want them being separated from their families under a policy started by Obama and Biden. But we're just going to focus on gun control measures. Oh, okay, exactly. And we pro-lifers are just going to focus on ending abortion. So no other movement gets that critique. That's the point. So it's actually just a political cudgel. To silence those that you already don't like or to siphon votes away from the Republican Party under this new redefinition of pro-life. Cool. My greatest encouragement right now would probably be the church. I'm seeing people realize that, wow, the country is falling to pieces in front of our very eyes. And maybe we as Christians in the church, maybe we really should seek the good of the city where we've been sent into exile.
What are some of the most fruitful tactics that people take that you see happening within the pro-life movement that is bearing fruit? where minds are being changed, where ground is being taken.
Yeah.
Where,
Well, I mean, we need to be in the lion's den, which is the university campuses. We have to be there. I mean, this is where the worst ideas happen. And if you want to know where the country's going to be in 15 years, look at college campuses right now. They function a little bit like a cultural or philosophical crystal globe, and they tell you where the country will be. So we have to contend there in order to sort of stop this mania. But it's the same answer. It's the church being the church, loving their neighbor. And the majority of the pro-life movement are religious individuals.
Sure.
They're people motivated for their love of Christ and their understanding that human beings are image bearers of God. Why wouldn't we be outside of these death centers? I mean, it's very reasonable that we would be there. There's only one place in the country, guys, where we know innocent human beings are scheduled to die. And we have their addresses. We know where they are. You can Google it. You can find where children are scheduled to die, where broken families are showing up at such a low point in their life that what have they done? They've actually told themselves that they have to pay a physician to kill their child. Whose heart is more ready for the gospel? So even from a utilitarian standpoint, like putting aside the child who's scheduled to die, which is the main concern, if we put aside the baby for a second, why wouldn't we be out there for the families who we want? I mean, this is an evangelistic opportunity. This is the Great Commission. But then on top of that, they've scheduled their child to be killed. Why wouldn't we be out there using our free speech on public sidewalks to plead with the families? Not to yell and scream and call them baby killers. Don't be a jerk. And that's not effective anyways. That's not loving. But saying, ma'am, we love you. We're here for you. Our church will support you. What do you need? These people in there, they're not for you. They do not love you. They're taking money to kill your child and telling you that this will help you. Look, this is my friend Sally. She had an abortion 20 years ago, and she would love to talk to you. She regrets what she did. She dealt with years of depression because of it. We're here for you. Our church loves you. We will raise that child. We will throw you a baby shower. We'd love to get to know you. Our church is here for you. Why wouldn't we do that? And so my friends at Love Life out of Charlotte, North Carolina, this is what they do. It's just the church being the church. They have 150 church partners now in Charlotte. So when someone chooses life, guys, they throw her a baby shower. They get her a car. They get her diapers for a year. They share Jesus with her. She accepts the gospel. Then she raises and dedicates that baby in the church, where the members of that church were outside of the sidewalk on that day that she had her child scheduled to die. Awesome. And if we turn from this as a country, it could be that God will have mercy on this country, because God will not bless a people or a land that kills their own babies, their own children. And so by contending for life, we're actually contending for the soul of the republic itself. And I just wanted to briefly share this with you. In Clark County, there are 17 to 25 abortions per week in this county.
What was that number again?
17 to 25 abortions per week. So that equates to 884 to 1,300 abortions annually in Clark County's neighborhoods. Since 1973, there have been over 50,000 abortions in Clark County. In the last 48 years since abortion was legalized, over 50,000 image bearers have been murdered in this county. That is more than 5 recognized genocides. That's more than Bosnian, than Latvian, than the Hutus, the Tutsis, all of these combined. It's significantly more. And Clark County has approximately 200 Christian churches. So there are tens of thousands of Christians who worship the greatest unborn child ever, Jesus, who believe that rights come from him and dignity and value comes from him. And where are they? Well, I mean, I got 2 sitting in front of me, but where's the church? Where are the pastors, the shepherds who are supposed to protect the flock from the enemy? And Satan is using these individuals to break families apart and to actually tear families apart, quite literally, their own children. It's entirely reasonable that we would be outside of these clinics. And so if your church or people want to know more about that, go to lovelife.org/America. I'm an ambassador for Love Life, and their goal is to get a Christian witness outside every abortion clinic in the country, offering the hope of Jesus and the help of the local church.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
That's great. Well, Seth, thank you so much for being on with us. We appreciate you. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. And thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to go to the website, check out Seth Gruber, and we'll see you next time.